Good morning. Nice to see you. So, perhaps a good idea today to go a little bit into some of the basics, because I do quite often get questions about, what we do here and if it's really worthwhile for beginners to show up and do the meditation or not. So I think it's a good time to clear that up a little bit and explain what this is all about. So you get a clear understanding of what you're doing here when you're coming. You're sitting down, you cross your legs, you close your eyes, and go through all these internal type of cultivations. So what we do here is based on the Buddha's teachings or the Buddha's instructions. That is my own personal background. This is my own personal main background, is from the school of Buddhism. So naturally, that's what I draw from. So the principal idea of the Buddha's teachings are pretty straightforward. What he discussed and what he revealed to people is fairly simple. Basically talked about the number one problem that we all have, and he presented a solution to that problem. So the number one problem that we all experience, that we all share, that we all have in common, is the problem of suffering. Yes, you call it dukkha, which doesn't really have to be translated. As soon as you start translating these kind of words, they usually take on different kind of meanings for each one of us. What he was basically talking about is just basic sense of being unsatisfied constantly with the way it is, with this moment. There's a constant sense of dissatisfaction, constant sense of searching, of not being there yet, of being incomplete, of trying to somehow find a sense of completion in life. Adding on something to yourself that then would bring some ease, where you can then finally go, now I can enjoy life. Finally, all my problems are solved. Now I can just have a good time. And genuinely so. I mean, really having a good time, knowing that even if something bad would happen, it wouldn't affect you. Not just experiencing good circumstances, which we all do from time to time, right? We all have nice circumstances in our lives. Times of relative absence of trouble, absence of, say, illness, absence of other people bothering us, absence of financial problems and so forth. We all know what that's like. And during those times of relative absence of problems, we may quickly get the idea, yeah, but I don't suffer at all. Then you can ask yourself the question, okay, maybe at the moment you're enjoying a relatively nice, fortunate circumstances, but are you still capable of experiencing suffering? Does that still apply to you? If, for example, those positive circumstances that you're currently experiencing would suddenly change, would you then suffer? Like, okay, you're happily married, let's say, you're just married and life is amazing and you're basically walking on flowers. And your heart is as light as a cloud and the weather is amazing even if it rains. Cool, that's great, wonderful. But does that mean you're free from suffering now? Or does it just mean that you're in a kind of a state as if you've just eaten a painkiller? So it's nice. You're not feeling the pain. It's suppressed because circumstances are good, but the fundamental problem isn't solved. You're still capable of experiencing pain, very much so. You're still a sensitive being, aren't you? So if all of a sudden your spouse would not do what they're supposed to do and would do the opposite, would you not suffer? It's pretty simple, right? It's easy to be honest with ourselves and to find out, oh yeah, I'm subject to suffering. I'm subject to old age, illness, death. I'm subject to losing what I love, and I'm subject to gaining what I hate. I'm not free from that, by all means. I'm actually totally bound up with circumstances. My happiness is totally dependent on what's going on right now. So when the Buddha talks about suffering, he doesn't mean bad circumstances. He means much more that we're tied up, that we're bound to, enslaved to circumstances. As long as that's the case, life is going to be and remain unsatisfying. And we constantly need to change the circumstances around us. Why? Well, because circumstances, by their nature, are constantly changing. They're not stable. There's no sound, as we just went through in the meditation, right? You might have observed that sound is not stable. Thinking is not stable. Feeling is not stable. What about other people in your life? Are they stable? No, because their feelings, their experiences in the senses are not stable too. So we're kind of always walking on thin ice. According to the Buddha, life is an experience of walking on thin ice. And he points to this not to make us depressed. That's not the point, right? The Buddha didn't just proclaim that there is suffering and there is a problem just so we can feel depressed and unhappy. That's not the point. The point is that he then goes on and he presents a solution to the problem. If you have a problem in your life and you want to solve it, what do you need to do? What's the first thing you need to do? Say again? To admit to it. Yes, very good, yes. To admit to it, yes. You need to be honest with yourself, in other words, and, admit that you have a problem. That's quite a hard thing, actually. I've heard from circles of Alcoholics Anonymous, that this is the very thing that you first have to do. You'd have to admit to the fact that you're an alcoholic, right? It's the admittance that always comes, like, hello, my name is Tobi, I'm an alcoholic. In that admittance is a lot of power, because if you're unable to admit, and that's the fundamental problem of an alcoholic, in the beginning, they will not want to admit to that, even though their heart kind of knows. They know they have a problem, but they want to be strong. No, I can solve this. This is not really a problem. It's just a little bit. I can fix this. But they can't. And they often dabble around for years and years before they have to be in a position where they admit, okay, really, I do have a problem. I need to get this fixed. I need help. So we need to step down from the arrogance of the ego and be humbled. Actually, I need help. Actually, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm spending years of my life trying to fix my problems, but I'm getting nowhere. Instead, I'm experiencing cycle after cycle of the same kind of stuff over and over again. So it's this kind of humbling admittance to our problem. Yes, that's definitely the first thing. Then after you have admitted to your problem, what's next? Say again?
Go deeper.
Precisely. You need to go deeper. You need to be willing to look at your problem and understand it. Really understand it. Not just having a bunch of unstructured, random thoughts about your problem under the shower. But really look, really understand. And this is difficult for most people because our mind isn't really structured in a way where it is consequently following one point until it's solved it. That's very rare. Most people are not thinking like that. Our thinking is very discursive. It bounces around, it's all over the place. It's very unstructured, the way people talk. It's a lot of associations, jumping around, being totally unconcentrated. How can you solve a problem like that? It's impossible. Well, the first of the time, what we need to do is be able to stabilize our mind and actually look, there is a problem. What's the problem really all about? We need to understand the cause of it, the origin of it. So that's how the Buddha presents it actually. He presents it as the first noble truth. This is the first fact of life. There is suffering. He doesn't say I am suffering. He says there is suffering, which is an undeniable truth. This is a fact for all of us. All you need to do to understand that fact is sit down, don't move, and look. Pay attention. That's really it. I just recently talked with my teacher and I asked him, why don't you go and teach meditation? And he basically answers, he says, well, what's there to teach? Just sit still, don't move. That's it. Right? But he's used to addressing people who are incredibly sincere in their practice. Yes? We're not like still in that state where we are deluding ourselves very much. He comes from the supposition that people are, when they start to practice meditations, are very honest with themselves. If we are very honest with ourselves, then yes, that's enough to say, sit down, don't move, watch. What will happen? Well, your first experience will be there is suffering. It's undeniable, it's a fact, it's truth. And once you figure that out, you may develop a curiosity around it, right? Okay, what is this suffering actually? What is it consisting of? What's its origination point? Where does it come from? And then you investigate further and you will understand that suffering arises because of craving. That's the Buddha calls it craving, tanha. Craving really means, let's make it really simple, wanting and not wanting. Just because of the presence of the energy of wanting or not wanting, or in other words, aversion and attachment, because of the presence of these energy in our minds, we are not able to rest with the truth of this moment. We're not able to just be at ease, because we're constantly involved with what is going on in this current moment's experience. Whatever comes into your consciousness, you're heavily invested in it. You want to control it. A feeling comes up, you want to own it. You want to control it. You want to bend it into the right direction and make it pleasant. If it is a nice feeling that arises, you want to keep it. And you want to amplify the volume. And if it's an unpleasant feeling, you want to get rid of it. You start fighting against it. That's the problem. It's our investment in circumstances. Our wish to control those, to be in charge of our experience. Yes? So when we identify that, clearly that's not it yet. So we have identified, okay, that's why I suffer, that's why I'm on fire. Because I want something. That's obviously that's not the solution yet. So when you go deeper and you investigate, then what's there to be done with that wanting? What do you think? Because it's the cause of suffering. If you find the cause of suffering, what do you need to do with it? What's the duty pertaining to the cause of suffering? Let's say you have a fire in your garden and it's spreading. And then you notice that it's your neighbor who is constantly putting fuel into the fire. What do you need to do to make it stop? So the fire goes out by itself, gradually simmering down, and then your neighbor comes with the fuel again. Burn the neighbor. Burn the neighbor. Okay. Burning the neighbor, yes. Okay, symbolically speaking, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to get rid of the fuel of suffering, and then suffering will stop. This is a common problem we all experience. If you have a lot of ants in your kitchen or cockroaches or whatever in your house, what's the problem? Is it the cockroaches? No, it's food. There is some food for them somewhere. That's why they come. So what do you need to do? Well, get rid of the food. Stop feeding it. So why do we suffer? Because we feed the tendency of craving. We feed the cause of it. All right, it's like fanning a fire. It keeps coming up. You keep burning like this. So naturally, when you see that for yourself, that mechanism in your practice, directly, not intellectually, you're not sitting there thinking about it. You see it directly. You look right into it. Oh wow, it's me doing this. I'm fanning the fire of suffering. Right now, right here. And then you stop fanning it. What will happen next? Fire stops. Your suffering comes to an end. That's the third noble truth. This is the noble truth of Buddha calls it Nirodha. Nirodha means something like cooling down. Yes, you put a beer into the fridge, it'll cool down. It is, if you want to take the word, it's nirvana-ing as a verb. It is cooling down. Because you're not heating it up anymore, it'll cool down. And in that cooling down, when the suffering cools down, you feel what? You feel happy. Happiness always arises in the absence of suffering. The less you suffer, the less weight you carry, the happier you feel, the better you are. The single reason why you're unhappy, because you carry too much weight. You carry too much suffering around with you. Why would you carry it? Because you're carrying it. You're not letting it go. You're attached to it. Yes? So that's a very direct experience of understanding, being willing to enter suffering and stay patiently, being willing to observe it, to understand its cause, and then to release the cause and experience the end of it. And the difference is you're not experiencing the end of it because you are distracting yourself somehow. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling too well. Let's go out to Phuket town and have some fun. And then you feel good again. Of course you do, because you're distracted from your suffering for a moment. And yeah, people can manage. They can distract themselves their entire lives long. But it will never solve the problem. You will distract yourself infinitely. So in order to really end the problem, to cut it at the root, you have to be willing not to distract yourself. You have to be willing to stay and look. That requires restraint. You have to be willing to restrain yourself from doing what comes most naturally to you, which is to run, to escape, to distract, to avoid. You have to instead learn to stay. It's pretty difficult, but that's the way you grow. If you want anything in life, success, financial success, relationship success, good health, anything really, you need to restrain yourself. You can't just eat whatever tastes good whenever you want to, if you want to be healthy. In fact, eating what tastes really nice is often the cause of bad health. And doing whatever feels great is very often the cause of downfall, isn't it? It's like, why do you experience problems in your life? Oh, because you did that thing that you thought is going to be awesome. That's why you are in trouble right now. Or why all the tears during the divorcing process? Well, because once you decided to get married. Why do we feel horrible when someone dies? Well, because once we were really happy when they were born. Right? The problem is that we get ourselves into trouble because we feel that this will give us something nice, and then we end up disappointed and we just learn, oh, wow, things are bad. No. Me maneuvering myself into things is bad over and over again. And unless we are willing to see that honestly and cut it, there is no end of suffering, aka happiness. There is no true happiness for any of us possible. The only thing then you will experience is temporary pleasure followed by pain. Is that what you want? If I gave you a choice, if I said, okay, I give you a choice, you have the route A, which is you're going to experience the infinitude of cycling through pleasure and pain. You will be happy, but it will always be followed by misery, and then happiness again, and then misery again. Infinitely. Does that feel appealing to you? Or do you want to go to choice B, which is you're going to be uncomfortable a little bit, but then you'll be comfortable for good, regardless of what happens. You'll be at ease. You'll be free from suffering, period. So no matter what happens in your life, you'll be fine. Which one is it? They have this experiment that they did with little kids. They put like candy in front of them. You might have seen this. They put like a little bit of candy in front of them, like one piece of chocolate or something, and then they told them, they said, wait 10 minutes. If you don't eat this in those 10 minutes, you will get tenfold as much or twofold or something like this. You get double the amount. You get 2 chocolates, not just one. And then they were like filming the children with a hidden camera, and their struggle not to immediately just eat. And I've also heard, I think this is not 100% proven, but there is a theory around that people who are able to delay their gratification are more successful in life in general. Oh, the outrage that came after that insight. It's logical insight, of course. If you're able to make sacrifices, then you're likely to be more successful and happy in the long run. You'll be the guy that goes to the gym even if you don't want to. You still go because you know it's good for you. You'll be the guy that doesn't eat that thing even though it tastes good. You'll be the guy that doesn't say that snappy comment to your spouse even though you could because you're right. Right? Life is going to be more easy for you. It's going to be more pleasant. But that's due to the result of restraint. So the Buddha goes on to say that there is a path. That's the 4th noble truth. There's a path to the end of suffering. There's a path to happiness. Formulated more positively. There's a path to happiness. And a path to happiness is threefold. There's 3 trainings. There's only 3 things you need to do. 1, restrain yourself. Don't follow your impulses. That's the basic, that's the foundation. What we do when we meditate is what? You restrain yourself. You don't move, right? You sit there for an hour or half an hour. You sit there still and you commit not to move, not to escape, not to run away, but to look at yourself. In this half an hour, you're not distracting yourself. You're willing to face yourself honestly. So who am I then? Let's find out. That's a type of restraint. A routine is a type of restraint. I'll sit down every morning at 6 a.m. for half an hour. That's a restraint. If you were to do that, imagine, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Even though it's not always nice, in fact, most of the time it's not nice, who would you become? Just imagine, you are the person that sits in meditation every morning, same time, diligently. Before you do anything else in your life, this is what I do first. Who would you become? And then you do your yoga afterwards or something like that, or you go to the gym. And then you start work. And before you go to sleep, 1 hour before you go to bed, you turn off every device, and you take some time to settle down, and then you meditate before you go to sleep. If you were to do this consistently, who would you become? Would you get better sleep? Better dreams? Would it be easier to wake up after a while? What if you were consistent with your sleeping routine? Waking up same time every day. Who would you become? What if you were consistent with good food? If you were to eat Little, not much. If you would invest in fasting, there's a very famous principle in Tai Chi Chuan, which is investing in loss. That's that principle. If you translate it to this path, you want to invest in making mistakes, in messing up, by at the same time adhering to what's correct, what's right for you. And you all know what's good for you. You all know what you, quote unquote, should be doing and what you should not be doing. You all know, right? Oh, lying is not good. So don't do it then. Right? You all know that it's not good to go to bed like really, really late, overdosing on Netflix before that, and then, waking up groggy or drinking too much, or, all these kind of things. We all know it's not. Like every smoker knows it's not good for them, but they still do it. They keep telling their children, like, yeah, don't smoke, it's not good for you, and then they light the next cigarette. What kind of message does that give? But we are so inconsequent with so many things in our life. So restraint is the very first training. Force yourself to do what's good for yourself. And don't do what's bad for yourself. It's tough. It's not easy. Therefore, it's called a training. You're not expected to do this perfectly from the start. But, start, at your level. What's your level? How much can you restrain yourself? And how much can you grow through that? Because restraint is going to reveal your suffering. It's going to make you uncomfortable. And that's an opportunity for you to grow, isn't it? Discomfort is always like a forge. It's like a fire. If you submit yourself to that fire, you will grow. There's no way around that. Human beings always grow through discomfort. Not always. Some are destroyed by it. That is true. But the willful kind of discomfort that you enter as a result of practicing restraint, well, that's cause for growth, for sure. It's cause for self-respect. It's cause for happiness. You'll feel good about yourself. All that kind of stuff. So start at your level. Find out how much can you take. Start committing to, say, 3 minutes a day of meditation in the morning. Do this consistently. Do it for a week. Can you? 3 minutes. Don't go for, okay, wow, Tobi said I need to restrain myself, so I'm going to sit down for an hour every day from now on and for the rest of my life. And you're going to fail for sure. Better take on something that you know you can do, while at the same time it pushes the boundary a little bit. It makes you expand. Like you would go to the gym. You push a little, so you get some growth. That's the principle. That's how you achieve growth, muscle growth, and increase in strength. Only if you push the boundary a little bit, so your body learns, I need to get stronger. Same applies for the mind. So you want to increase the weight that you lift mentally. And you do that through restraint. The second training is meditation. To translate that is still your mind. Make your mind still. Become centered. Like right now the mind is a monkey mind. It jumps all around the place. Constantly active, full of ideas, full of thoughts, and always moving. And it's that movement that is the expression of suffering. It's the foundational expression of suffering. That's what suffering really is. When that movement comes to an end, you will get to know what real happiness is. And you'll understand that, wow, the more still your mind becomes, the happier and better I feel. There's no denying that. This is a simple cause and effect thing. True happiness means stillness in the mind. Stillness in the mind means meditation. Cultivating that is meditation practice. And last but not least, if your mind is still and well-centered, grounded, it's usable, it's pliable. You can then use your mind like a sharp tool to understand reality of your experience. You can then really understand, oh wow, this is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the end of suffering. And this is what to do to reach the end. In this very moment. So that's the path to nirvana, the end of suffering. Or the highest happiness. However you like to call it. So this is certainly one goal that you can have. And in Buddhism, it's very common to phrase the goal in that way. And say the goal is to be free from suffering. To be happy, truly happy. And what we practice here when we come together, we practice meditation, we practice stilling the mind. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these things that help you to understand what we're doing, that help you to feel motivated and inspired to do so, because you have a solid understanding of the benefits of it and why to do it and what the point is of doing it. All right. That's all that comes to mind for today. Are there any questions?